Hello, Alex Lafkus here. About to sit down and tie the woolhead that we fished on the Pier Marquette video. Really easy, simple tie. Just basically a circus peanut, bead chain eyes, and a little wool head. Nothing special. Front hook, B10S, number one. Back hook, Arex, Trout Predator number one. You can switch your sizes up if need be. That's the size I like to fish in a little bit lower water. I like the straight shank off the Trout Predator 1 when I'm tying marabou off the back, because the straighter shank, the marabou seems to foul less than it does if you're using a B10S. Weight on this one are small bead chain eyes, just black, 2 on each side. And the only other material you might not be familiar with is leech yarn. This stuff here in olive, they make a whole host of colors. Zero flash, lays really flat on the hook shank when you're tying, which I like. Also zero flash, which I like, especially in gin clear water on a cloudy day. Rubber legs, use whichever ones you want. I'm going to use a couple different colors of ram's wool. This is called, I guess, sculpin wool. It comes with the little patch on the back still, where it's connected to the hide, versus a lot of the newer ones that come kind of just in a rope form. I like this stuff better, but you can make any of it work. That should be about all you need. This fly's proven pretty effective. I like the weighting technique with just the beads, or the weighting style, I should say. If you're fishing low water, it's really rare that you need lead eyes or anything heavier. Sometimes even a cone feels too heavy in super low water. The small bead chains and that wool kind of counteract each other, so it's just enough weight to get it to sink, but it doesn't fall like a hammer. Like, say, if you just had just a little bit of head on with some lead eyes, then it's going to fall like a hammer. I do tie them with lead eyes on occasion, fishing deeper, faster water. But the bead chain has been really good to me in this style in the lower water we tended to have last winter and this spring. Um, I fish it in olive and ginger and black. You can do whatever colors. Olive as well, obviously. But it works well for me. And especially if fish are hanging in slower water, you can fish the fly. It's not going to fall to the bottom too quickly, and you'll still be able to present it well. But it accounted for, I had a 2-day span where I had clients catch 3 fish over 26 inches on the black one last fall. And it's not as much the pattern as it is the presentation. So if fish are living in, or holding in slower water, you can fish it and you're not going to find bottom too fast. It'll just kind of hover a little bit better, which it's a tendency for them to do in colder water post spawn, where they use that slower water. So having something that doesn't fall like a hammer allows you to fish a little slower, as those fish are a bit more lethargic. But it's not a hard fly to tie. You can bust a few out before you go fishing, which is a great feature of it. Not much else to say. We're going to tie it up for you and see what you think and give it a go. Thanks. So, like I said in the intro, I'm going to use this is the Trout Predator TP 610 number 1. Good for a 4-inch fly. And my little Vivis 6-aught. So what I was saying in that video too is that I like the straighter shank on these, because it seems like the tail doesn't wrap as easily on the straighter shanks versus the B10S. Obviously you can do whatever colors you want. I've just been using, this is just olive. Hard to find decent marabou these days, but this pack seemed to be all right. Get some of the shorter stuff out. I always use 2 plumes. And that allows me to get rid of some of the ones that are shorter and still have enough for the tail. But these are pretty basic. It's kind of fits the pattern of most of the stuff I tie, which is pretty easy, not too time consuming. Dahlberg said it when he was talking to my buddy Chris, that if you can't tie two before you walk out the door to go fishing, what's the point? And I'm pretty much in that belief as well, because I'm going to go through. And then you don't care when people throw one in a tree because you got a couple more, or you know you can make a couple more in short order. Those jaws aren't as tight as I want them. On these smaller hooks too, I'm just using the Renzetti Traveler. I've got the bigger jaws for some bigger stuff, but this seems to work fine. The schlappen I'm using is olive dyed over white. Does it matter? Absolutely not. But, most of the stuff we do in fly tying doesn't matter. It's just what we prefer or what we like. So this is what I happen to like on this. I always try to find a little smaller hackle for these, for the back hook, so that it does kind of taper up. Does it matter? Probably not. But okay, leech yarn. And I don't know if it's old school or I've just I've used leech yarn for a long time, and I do still like using leech yarn for things like this. Keeps the body smaller. I don't get any of the flash, which is good in my book. That's a real thin, easy to use product. But it like keeps those bodies a little bit more on the thin side than using just regular chenille. I think in my mind, and it's quick. See, just boom, 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 done. I've got a little ball in there. Thank goodness that doesn't matter. Then usually what I do here, and I don't know if this is right, wrong, or what, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up first. And I'll get it most of the way up there. And frankly, I don't actually care if that blows off while I'm fishing. It's going to happen. Now we're going to add rubber legs. I usually do it right after I wrap the hackle up the majority of the way. And then I'm going to tie them in and then finish it with the rest of the hackle. And that actually gives you, and you don't have to do it this way. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but just kind of drop them in there and get a couple wraps on there. And hopefully they're still long enough you can pull them back and out of the way. Go in front. You can always just tie them in at the head too, but I'm going to try to do it like this. And that way, when I do eventually blow a bunch of the hackle off, because I'm unhooking a fish on it, I'll actually keep a little bit at the head. But like I said, I mean, I've been known to fish these things, any of my streamers, into the dirt, just because I don't really care that much, and the fish don't either. A bunch of little whip finishes. I'll do 3 or 4, just 2 to 3 wrappers. And then hit it with little Sally Hansen's. Smooth and easy. trim these little rubber legs. So there's not much material back behind there. I don't really know what those rubber legs, if that matters on it or not, but there they are. Gotta have rubber legs regardless. Durability is the key though, you know, that's why I'd rather spend more time on gluing it and doing a bunch of whip finishes than I would spending the time making it prettier. All right, I'll make sure that the second half of this fly can stay in the frame. So there you go. That stuff dries pretty quick. Now we're going to grab one of the B10S number ones. For the front hook. I'm hoping my new lights get here soon so that I'll actually have room to tie, because this is a little tight, but hopefully it does work out a little bit better than a little more in focus than the last one. So first thing I'm going to do is add the mono connection. Mono's cheap, so I'm going to use more than you need to do this. So now, like in that skunk video, I just did the, laid it in. But now that we've got a back hook, make sure that kind of sits straight off the back, you know, fighting that line of enough for movement, but not too much, so that it fouls. That should be about perfectly straight. That should be close enough anyway. So then this is where I'm going to add decent amount of pressure with the thread. Fold it back. I usually trim it prior to going all the way back. And you can glue it if you need, you know, typically it's so rare that I have any of this stuff fail, like a back hook pulling out. As long as you're using monofilament, not fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon will slide out, but it seems like your thread's gonna dig in there enough to keep it in place. Then we're going to add just a little bit of marabou to cover up that connection, which it's a good way to get rid of a bad or short or kind of junky piece of marabou. That's what I usually end up doing in this situation. And it just kind of helps blend it and make it, you know, a little bit more one piece, rather than looking like two pieces with the big gap in there. So just a little bit to cover it up. Then a little bit bigger slopping your next time going up. I'm running low on this pack, so it's whatever. Time to go to the fly shop and get more. You know what I should do before I get too far ahead of myself is tie in my bead chains. I always put any of this stuff, unless I'm designing it specifically to fish heavy structure, I'm gonna put them on the bottom because I want the hook points down. Top jaw is a tough spot to get a hook, so if it's, you know, if you're not specifically designing something to bounce off rocks or in a situation like that, I'm gonna make it so the hook points right down. You can add a drop of glue there if you're so inclined. I am not. Then just back to the leech yarn. And now really the only thing that matters now is how far back off this you're going to leave it, because you want to have room for wool. Now I'm not putting much wool on here. It's just enough to kind of create that little blocker head, and kind of maybe slow down the fall a touch. So I'm going to go up to kind of just behind those eyes. I probably use more leech yarn than a lot of people, but I do like the product. Sorry about that, little shake there. And this is going to kind of be left in. I'll kind of wrap some of this bigger material too, just to give it a little extra collar there. That'll kind of blend into that wool as well. I'll come back and wrap over it. Now I do put the rubber legs up here. I'm really not sure it matters because that wool is kind of right there, but you know, why not? Got 8 million sets of rubber legs, and actually kind of get happy now when I start running out of certain ones. My goal now is, instead of owning every color, is to have about 5 colors. So we're in the process of trying to run out of materials. I got a lot of stuff. I would like to actually own less. Well, looks like I got 3 together here, so I guess the front's going to get 3 aside. Oh well. Oh well, doesn't matter. Does not matter. Alright, so now we're going to go in here and add some wool. It's going to get a little bulky right there, but it doesn't really matter. Wool's easy to play with, easy to use. I do have 2 colors up here. One thing you do want to have is a little brush. Like some of this wool, I like the wool that's more on these patches. You know, like see how there's a little patch there? But this one's a little kinky. So I'm going to brush it out a little with my, I don't know what, cheapest comb you can find probably. But that gets all the kinky stuff pretty much out of there. I do like the wool. They're selling it now like in a cord kind of form. Don't like that as much, but it seems like it might be one of the only ways to get it now. So I might have to just get over it. And since I'm not going to use a ton, I'm kind of just building the collar. I'm going to trim some of the excess that's going to be too long on there. And I'm just kind of building a collar. You know, this will kind of just blend into that other material there. You know, this, deer hair, those type of materials, anything that you kind of do a head with, I like to give it a little wrap right through the center of it as well. I'm going to add a little bit on the bottom. Brush out a little bit more. Wool's pretty easy to work with. Just kind of whop it on there. And I'm using so little, you know, like the knock-on wool might be at some point that it, you know, it soaks up a lot of water. It's yeah, that is true. I'm using so little that I don't even really, you don't even really notice it. kind of got a little loop of that wool in there. I knew that little bulked up head was going to be a bit of an issue, but I'll just kind of pick it out with the comb. There we go. Good enough. I'll kind of cover the eyes with that. A little bit tied down there. So if you just kind of go through and pick that stuff out as you go, it'll work just fine. There we go. That's going to be just fine. And then if you want to add a separate color, like, you know, you could add a little bit. I'll add a little bit of dark olive now before I add a chunk of light olive at the front. Gives you a little different, you know, a little different look to it. Does it matter? I don't know. Every sculpin I've seen's got a little bit of a mottled head to it, so I usually just kind of thread it over the eye, so I get a little bit on each side, a little bit on the bottom. Oh, just kind of whatever. It's not rocket science here. Not building a piano. We're just tying a fly here. And I'm going to wrap it back far enough. I'll kind of push it back on the eyes, and then I'll add a little bit more of the light olive. And then we're just going to give it a little trim, which, you know, it's not like you're trying to make, it's not as imperative as trimming deer hair. This is kind of just like brush it out a little and get a rough shape in. That's all I'm trying to do with this stuff. So it's, like I said, easy to deal with. I'm just putting a little bit kind of on each side, a little underneath. I haven't tied one of these in a few months, so it's a little sloppy. I've been tying dry flies. Just cover it up. There we go. Then what finishes? Bunch of them. Everybody names their flies now. I don't know what I would call this. The woolly nut. The bead chain wool head. I mean, it's really just a variation built off the same 2-hook platform as a circus peanut, just adding a little wool and a little less weight. And that's the beauty of fly tying, you know. Like, I tie flies for situational fishing. I had some situations where in super low water I do not like lead eyes. I feel like I have to work the fly too fast to get it to fish how I want. So by just going lighter in bead chains, I was able to fish a little bit more, I thought a little better, a little more effective. Slow it down, especially in colder water. So without having to worry about snagging bottom. I also, you know, like, I guide a lot. So when I'm guiding, you know, easier is better. And if they're not casting with perfectly straight lines, you know, it's better to have that. So I'm just kind of boxing off the head to start, kind of pulling it to the side or pulling it down, and just going to kind of start with making a little square around those eyes. You can see, I'll kind of trim it up a little, but that's kind of where you start. It's really easy to deal with wool. And like I said, it's not that. And then I just kind of come in and take off as much as I want. You know, obviously the more you keep on there, the more it'll swim, the more kick you'll get. But I'm tying these more for, you know, low water, just something to hover a little bit. So I was tying it real tight and short, just enough. Just kind of covering the front. And I'm sure, I think they make brushes with all this stuff now too. I've got the wool. It's really cheap when you buy it off a square. But that was it. That was the fly I was fishing in that video. See, real easy to tie, nothing special. But it was very effective. And like I said, you know, last fall, I fished this a lot in Arkansas last winter. I tied it with lead eyes for down there and fished it a little bit deeper because that's the situation we're in. I tried the bead chain, didn't do as well. So we switched up to the lead and it seemed to work better, but that's just because those fish were holding a little deeper too. But you know, got on kind of a tough bite one day and all of a sudden we hit a little window where I was getting them on sculpins in a few spots, and that it did really well. And I was just using small lead eyes, so not super heavy, but just a little bit. But that's it, you know, just a little bit of wool, a little bit of bead chain, a little different weight and lower water, about as natural as you can get if they're eating olive. Nothing special, but very effective. If you haven't used a ton of wool, like it's a pretty good product and it's really easy to use. So you can always trim it down more if you want it to sink a little bit more, tie it with lead eyes if you're fishing a little deeper water. But that's it. Thanks for tuning in.